The baby screamed until his face turned purple. Not a cry for food, not a whimper for attention. This was something deeper, something darker, the kind of scream that crawls into your bones and stays there. The kind that makes you wonder what horror could possibly live inside a body so small. His name was Tyler. He was 2 years old, and every single morning, in a penthouse worth $47 million overlooking Central Park, this child woke up screaming like he was being torn apart from the inside. Nobody seemed to care. His mother, Blair Harrington, was considered fashion royalty. Her name graced the covers of Vogue. Her designs dressed celebrities at every major red carpet. Her Instagram had 12 million followers who believed she was living the perfect life. But behind the filtered photos and the carefully staged moments, her own son was suffering, and she was too busy building an empire to notice. When she looked at Tyler, she didn't see a child. She saw a prop, a beautiful accessory for her carefully curated life. She dressed him in custom outfits worth more than most people's monthly salary. She posed for photos. She showed him off at galas. Then she handed him back to the nanny and walked away. Brett, Tyler's father, was even worse. He was a hedge fund manager with cold eyes and a permanent attachment to his phone. He treated his son like an inconvenient reminder of a decision he regretted. When Tyler cried, Brett left the room. When Tyler reached for him, Brett stepped back. He hadn't held his son in over 6 months. But the person who spent the most time with Tyler was Ashley, the nanny, young, efficient, and strangely cold. She was hired because of her impressive resume and her willingness to work long hours. The Harringtons paid her handsomely to keep Tyler quiet, fed, and out of the way, and she did her job, a little too well. Tyler never smiled around Ashley. He never laughed. Whenever she entered the room, something shifted in his tiny body. His shoulders tensed. His eyes went flat. He stopped making sounds altogether. Nobody noticed this. Nobody except the new cleaning lady. Della Williams was 43 years old. She had raised 3 children of her own. She had worked 12 jobs in the past decade, always cleaning, always invisible, always watching families who never saw her. She took the job at the Harrington penthouse because it paid well and the hours worked around her night school classes. She was studying to become a nurse. She wanted something more than scrubbing rich people's floors, but on her very first day, something stopped her cold. She was mopping the hallway outside the nursery when she heard it. A small, broken cry, not loud, almost silent. The sound of a child who had given up on being heard. She paused, listened. The cry came again. Something in her chest tightened. Through the cracked door, she saw Tyler sitting in his crib, alone. His tiny hands gripped the bars like he was in a prison. His spine curved at an angle that made her stomach drop. He looked up at her with eyes that were too tired for a toddler. Eyes that said, "Please help me." Della felt something crack inside her. She knew she was just the cleaning lady. She knew it wasn't her place to interfere. She knew wealthy families like this didn't take kindly to the help asking questions. But she also knew what a child in pain looked like. And this child was drowning. Over the next few days, Della watched. She watched how Ashley handled Tyler, never rough enough to leave obvious marks, but never gentle either. She watched how Blair swept through the nursery like a tornado, snapping photos and leaving just as quickly. She watched how Brett avoided his own son like the boy carried a disease. Nobody talked to Tyler. Nobody sang to him. Nobody rocked him when he cried. He was 2 years old. He was surrounded by money, and he was completely alone. Then, on her 7th day of work, Della was sent to clean the nursery while Ashley took a break. It was supposed to be a quick task. In and out, don't disturb the child, but Tyler looked at her, and she couldn't look away. She walked over to his crib, slowly, carefully. She reached out and touched his tiny hand. He flinched at first, like he expected pain, but then his fingers curled around hers. He held on like she was a lifeline. That's when she noticed it. A small mark on his leg, just above the knee. Barely visible under his expensive pajamas. She pulled the fabric back gently, and what she saw made her blood run cold. It wasn't just a mark, it was a pattern, and it explained everything. What would you do if you discovered a secret that could destroy a powerful family, but save an innocent child? Tell me in the comments. because Dilla was about to face that exact choice. Had she just stumbled onto something that was never meant to be found? And if she spoke up, would anyone even believe her, or would she lose everything she had worked so hard to build? The marks on Tyler's leg told a story nobody was supposed to read. Dilla stared at them. 4 small bruises, spaced perfectly apart, like the grip of an adult hand. Next to them, a faint red line, almost like something had been wrapped tightly around his thigh. Then another set of marks near his ankle, older, yellowing, healing. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern. Her hands trembled as she gently pulled Tyler's pajamas back into place. The boy looked at her with those hollow eyes, and in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding, a silent plea. He knew something was wrong. He just couldn't tell anyone. Dilla stepped back from the crib. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to call the police, to tell someone, anyone, but she stopped herself. Think, Dilla, think. She was nobody in this house, less than nobody. She was the woman who mopped the floors and scrubbed the toilets. She didn't even have a key to the front door. She had to buzz to be let in each morning. Who would believe her? A black cleaning woman accusing a wealthy, famous, white family of child abuse. She'd seen how that story ended. She'd lived it. Her word against theirs wouldn't be a battle, it would be a massacre. And yet, that little boy's hand had curled around her fingers like she was the first warm thing he'd touched in weeks. How could she walk away from that? The sound of footsteps in the hallway snapped her back to reality. Ashley was returning. Dilla quickly grabbed her mop and pretended to clean the corner of the room, keeping her eyes down, her breathing steady. "You're still in here?" Ashley's voice was sharp, irritated. "Just finishing up, ma'am." "Well, finish faster. Tyler needs his nap." Dilla nodded and gathered her supplies, but as she walked past the crib, she glanced at Tyler one more time. His eyes followed her, begging her not to leave. She left anyway, but she didn't forget. Over the next 3 days, Dilla watched Ashley like a hawk. She found excuses to clean near the nursery. She lingered in the hallways. She listened through the doors, and what she heard made her sick. Ashley never hit Tyler, not exactly. But she handled him like he was an object, lifting him by one arm, dropping him into the crib with a thud, leaving him in his high chair for hours while she scrolled through her phone. When Tyler cried, Ashley would grab his leg to keep him still, tight, hard, leaving those same marks Dilla had seen. But it was worse than that. Dilla noticed something else. Every afternoon, around the same time, Ashley would strap Tyler into a specialized car seat, a medical device meant to help with his spine. But she wasn't using it right. She was cinching the straps too tight, leaving him immobilized for hours at a time. The device was supposed to help him. Ashley had turned it into a cage. And the longer Tyler spent trapped in that position, the worse his spine became. Day after day, his tiny body was being twisted, deformed, damaged, not by a medical condition, by neglect. Dilla wanted to vomit. She wanted to storm into that nursery and rip Tyler out of that seat and take him far away from this family and their cold, empty money. She wanted to shake Blair until she opened her eyes. She wanted to scream at Brett until he put down his phone and looked at his son. But she couldn't, not yet. She needed proof. She needed something concrete, something that couldn't be denied or dismissed or explained away. Because if she was going to speak up, she was going to make sure someone listened. If stories like this hit you right in the heart, subscribe to this channel now. There's so much more coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss what Dilla discovers next. That night after her shift ended, Dilla sat in her small apartment and stared at the wall. Her dinner went cold on the table. Her textbook sat unopened. All she could think about was Tyler. She thought about her own children. How she used to rock them to sleep. How she used to sing to them. How she used to kiss every bruise and wipe every tear. Tyler had none of that. He had cold hands and empty eyes and a spine that was slowly breaking. And nobody cared. Nobody except her. She made a decision that night. A dangerous decision. A decision that could cost her everything, her job, her reputation, maybe even her freedom if things went wrong. But she couldn't live with herself if she stayed silent. She was going to save that boy. The only question was how. The next morning, Delilah arrived at the Harrington penthouse with a small camera hidden in her cleaning apron. It was old and cheap, something her son had given her years ago, but it worked. She was going to document everything. She was going to build a case, and then she was going to bring this house of secrets crashing down. But as she walked through the front door that morning, she felt a chill run down her spine. Ashley was waiting for her in the foyer, arms crossed, eyes narrow. "Mrs. Harrington wants to see you," she said. Now, has someone seen her examining Tyler? Had Ashley noticed her watching? Was Delilah about to be thrown out before she could even begin? Blair Harrington sat on a white leather couch that probably cost more than Delilah's entire apartment. She didn't look up when Delilah entered. The living room was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, fresh flowers that were replaced daily, artwork that Delilah recognized from museum catalogs. Everything was pristine. Everything was perfect. Everything was a lie. "You wanted to see me, ma'am." Delilah's voice was steady, but her heart was hammering. Blair finally looked up. Her eyes were cold, calculating, the kind of eyes that had climbed over countless people to reach the top. "The nursery floors," Delilah blinked. "Ma'am, they weren't clean enough yesterday. I found a smudge near Tyler's crib." Relief and anger flooded through Delilah at the same time. Relief that her secret was still safe. Anger that this woman cared more about floor smudges than her own child's suffering. "I apologize, ma'am. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't." Blair waved a dismissive hand. "That room needs to be spotless at all times. We have photographers coming next week for a feature spread." Of course, a photo shoot. Tyler's Payne would be dressed up in designer clothes and posed for magazines, and Blair would smile like the perfect mother she pretended to be. "Yes, ma'am." Delilah turned to leave, but Blair's voice stopped her. "One more thing." A pause. "Ashley mentioned you've been lingering near the nursery more than necessary. Is there a reason for that?" The question hung in the air like poison. Delilah turned back slowly. Her mind raced. One wrong word and everything would crumble. She lowered her eyes, playing the part of the humble servant. "I have grandchildren, ma'am. Sometimes I hear Tyler crying and it reminds me of them. I didn't mean to overstep." Blair studied her for a long moment. Then she laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "How sweet. Well, keep your grandmother's instincts to yourself. Ashley has Tyler's care under control. If only you knew," Delilah thought, but she nodded. "Of course, ma'am." She left the room with her head down and her blood boiling. Ashley was waiting in the hallway. Her smile was thin, knowing. "Careful, Delilah." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "People who ask too many questions around here don't last long." It was a warning, clear and cold. Delilah met her eyes. "I was just doing my job." "Make sure that's all you do." Ashley walked away, and Delilah felt the camera hidden in her apron like it weighed 1,000 pounds. They were watching her now, both of them. She had to be smarter, be more careful. One mistake and she'd be gone, and Tyler would be left alone with these people forever. That afternoon, she got her chance. Blair left for a meeting downtown. Brett, as usual, was locked in his office, and Ashley received a phone call that sent her rushing to her room with the door closed. Delilah moved fast. She slipped into the nursery and found Tyler strapped into that terrible car seat again. His face was red. His tiny fists were clenched. The straps were so tight she could see them digging into his shoulders. "Oh, baby," she whispered. "What are they doing to you?" She pulled out her camera and began documenting the straps. The marks on his legs, the way his spine curved at an unnatural angle, the way he flinched when she touched him, then slowly relaxed as he realized it was her. She photographed everything, but she needed more. She needed something that would prove Ashley was the one hurting him, something that couldn't be explained away or covered up. That's when Tyler did something unexpected. He pointed. His tiny finger stretched toward the corner of the room, toward a small table where Ashley kept her things. A bag, a notebook, a phone charger, and something else. Something hidden behind a stack of folded towels. Delilah walked over and moved the towels aside. Her breath caught in her throat. It was a medical journal, filled with handwritten notes. Detailed entries about Tyler's condition, his spine, his mobility, his reactions to certain positions. Ashley had been tracking everything, but not to help him. The notes made it clear. Ashley knew exactly what she was doing. She knew that leaving Tyler in that seat for too long would worsen his spine. She knew the straps were too tight. She knew the boy was in pain, and she was doing it anyway. Why? Dilla flipped through the pages, her hands shaking, and then she found it. A section near the back, highlighted, underlined, 3 words that changed everything. Insurance claim eligibility. Dilla's blood turned to ice. Ashley wasn't just neglecting Tyler, she was deliberately making his condition worse, and someone was going to profit from it. What kind of monster deliberately hurts a child for money? And more importantly, was Ashley working alone, or was someone else in this house in on the scheme? Drop your theory in the comments right now. Because what Dilla discovered next will change everything you think you know about this family. Dilla stood in that nursery, holding evidence of a crime, and the walls felt like they were closing in. Insurance claim eligibility. The words echoed in her mind like a death sentence, not for her, but for that little boy still strapped into the medical seat behind her. Someone was destroying Tyler's body for profit. And Ashley had it all documented like a sick scientific experiment. Dilla's first instinct was to run, take the journal, go straight to the police, let them handle it, but she'd been around long enough to know how that would play out. A stolen journal, a cleaning lady's word against a family worth hundreds of millions. She needed more. She quickly photographed every page of the journal, her hands trembling so badly the images came out slightly blurred. But they were legible, they were proof. Then she put the journal back exactly where she'd found it, towels replaced, everything is in order. Tyler watched her with those ancient eyes. "I'm coming back for you," she whispered. "I promise." She didn't know if he understood, but something in his expression shifted, the smallest flicker of hope in those hollow depths. It nearly broke her. She gathered her supplies and slipped out of the nursery just as she heard Ashley's door open down the hall. Her footsteps approached. Dilla was already mopping the bathroom by the time Ashley passed by. "Still here?" Ashley's voice was sharp. "Just the bathrooms left, ma'am." Ashley looked at her for a long moment, searching, suspicious. "Don't work too late." She continued toward the nursery, and Dilla let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That night, in her apartment, Dilla uploaded every photograph to her laptop. She created copies on 3 different USB drives. She emailed them to herself using an address she created just for this purpose. If something happened to her, this evidence would survive. Then she started researching. Insurance claims for medical conditions in children, malpractice, deliberate harm, legal precedents. What she found made her physically ill. In some cases, when a child developed a permanent disability, the family could receive substantial ongoing payments, medical coverage, disability support, long-term care funds. For a family like the Harringtons, who already had lawyers and accountants optimizing every tax loophole, this could mean millions. But it only worked if the condition was severe enough, if the child was damaged enough. Dilla pushed back from her laptop and stared at the ceiling. Was that what this was? Were the Harringtons so twisted by greed that they would sacrifice their own son's body for a payout they didn't even need? It seemed impossible, unthinkable. But she'd seen what money did to people, how it hollowed them out, how it replaced compassion with calculation. The question was, who was behind it? Ashley was the one causing the harm, that much was clear from the journal. But was she acting alone? Was this her own scheme, or was she following orders? Dilla thought about Blair, her obsession with image, her coldness toward her own child, the way she looked at Tyler like he was a burden wrapped in designer clothes. She thought about Brett, his absence, his indifference, the way he never touched his son. Either one of them could be involved, or both. Or maybe Ashley was running her own operation, planning to blackmail the family later with evidence of their neglect. Dilla didn't know. But she was going to find out. If you believe that every child deserves someone to fight for them, then subscribe to this channel right now. This story is far from over, and the next discovery will leave you speechless. The next morning, Dilla arrived at the penthouse with a new plan. She was going to get closer to Ashley, earn her trust, find out who she was really working for. It was dangerous. One wrong move and Ashley would know she was being investigated. But Dilla was done being careful. She found Ashley in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone while Tyler sat alone in his high chair, crying softly for food that hadn't been served. Dilla walked past, then paused. Casual, natural, long morning. Ashley looked up, surprised that the cleaning lady was speaking to her. What? I just mean, Dilla gestured toward Tyler. Kids at that age are exhausting. My grandchildren wore me out when they were small. Something shifted in Ashley's expression. The suspicion dimmed, replaced by something else. Weariness, maybe loneliness. You have no idea, Ashley muttered. This kid never stops. Dilla nodded sympathetically. Do you want me to get him his breakfast while you take a break? Ashley hesitated, then she shrugged. Whatever, the food's in the fridge. Second shelf. She walked out of the kitchen without looking back. Dilla moved to Tyler immediately. She lifted him from the high chair, gently, so gently, and cradled him against her chest. He was so light, too light for his age. I've got you, she whispered. I've got you. She fed him slowly, carefully, wiping his face with a soft cloth, speaking to him in low tones. For the first time since she'd met him, Tyler didn't cry. He just looked at her. Like she was the sun rising after an endless night. After Tyler was fed and settled, Dilla began cleaning the kitchen, but she kept her ears open. Listening, that's when she heard it. Ashley's voice, drifting from the nursery. She was on the phone. I know, but you said 6 months, and it's been almost that. When are we going to move forward? A pause. The documentation is perfect. I've been tracking everything exactly like you said. His condition is getting worse right on schedule. Another pause. Yes, I understand, but I want my cut before the claim goes through. I'm not getting paid enough to deal with this kid. Dilla's blood ran cold. Ashley wasn't working alone. Someone was directing her, someone with a plan, someone who had turned Tyler's suffering into a business arrangement. But who? The call ended. Footsteps approached. Dilla kept scrubbing the counter, her face blank, her mind racing. The voice on the other end of that call held the answer. The mastermind behind Tyler's torture was still hidden in the shadows. Was it one of his own parents orchestrating this nightmare? Or was there someone else, someone even more sinister, pulling the strings from outside the family? The answer was closer than Dilla realized, but the truth was buried so deep that finding it would mean risking everything. She spent the next 2 days playing a dangerous game, being helpful, being invisible, being the cleaning lady nobody thought twice about while she gathered information like a detective working the most important case of her life. Ashley grew slightly more comfortable around her. Not friendly, Ashley didn't seem capable of that, but tolerant. She started leaving Tyler with Dilla for short periods while she took her breaks, which always seemed to involve phone calls behind closed doors. Dilla used every opportunity to care for Tyler properly. She loosened his straps when Ashley wasn't looking. She held him and rocked him and whispered words of comfort into his tiny ears. She photographed any new marks that appeared on his body. The boy was transforming before her eyes. Not physically, his spine was still curved, the damage already done, but something in his spirit was awakening. He cried less. He watched her more. Once, he even smiled. It was the most beautiful thing Dilla had ever seen, but she couldn't save him alone. She needed to identify the person giving Ashley orders. And she needed proof that would hold up when she finally went to the authorities. Her opportunity came on a Thursday afternoon. Blair had left for Paris, a Fashion Week emergency that demanded her personal attention. Brett was working from home, but as usual, locked away in his office like Tyler didn't exist. Ashley received a call and stepped outside onto the terrace to take it. The penthouse door locked behind her automatically. She would be gone for at least 10 minutes. Dilla moved. She slipped into Ashley's room, heart pounding. It was neat, organized, impersonal, like a hotel room rather than a home. Ashley had been here for 8 months and hadn't made it her own at all. That told Dilla something. Ashley wasn't planning to stay. This was a job, a temporary assignment with a big payout waiting at the end. Dilla searched quickly, drawers, closet. Under the mattress, nothing. She was about to give up when she noticed Ashley's laptop sitting on the desk. Open, still logged in. Dilla's hands trembled as she scrolled through the emails. Most were mundane, shopping confirmations, spam. A few messages from friends she never replied to. But then Dilla found a folder labeled simply T. She clicked it. Dozens of emails filled the screen, all from the same sender. B.H. Blair Harrington. Dilla's stomach dropped. She opened the first email, dated 8 months ago, right when Ashley was hired. As we discussed, your primary responsibility is Tyler's condition management. Follow the protocol exactly. Documentation is essential. Your bonus will be paid upon claim approval. The second email was worse. Increase strap tension by 10%. Note any changes in spinal curvature. Keep him immobile for a minimum of 6 hours daily. The third made Dilla want to scream. The specialists must believe this is natural progression. If anyone asks questions, deflect. You know what's at stake. It was Blair, Tyler's own mother. She had hired Ashley not to care for her son, but to systematically destroy his body, to create a medical condition severe enough to justify massive insurance payouts, to turn her own child into a disability claim. All while she smiled for cameras and built her fashion empire and pretended to be Mother of the Year. Dilla photographed every email, every word, every damning piece of evidence. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. How could a mother do this? How could anyone look at their own child and see nothing but dollar signs? What kind of darkness lived inside a person who could order the torture of a 2-year-old? The answers didn't matter right now. Getting Tyler out did. But as Dilla moved to leave Ashley's room, she heard something that made her freeze. The terrace door opening. Ashley was back, and there was no way Dilla could make it out of the room without being seen. If you've ever had a moment where you had to make an impossible choice, hide or face the consequences, drop it in the comments, because Dilla's next decision will determine whether Tyler lives or dies. She looked around frantically, under the bed. No too obvious. The closet, too far. Her eyes landed on the bathroom door, slightly ajar. She slipped inside just as Ashley's footsteps entered the room. Stupid connection, Ashley muttered to herself. Can't even make a call in this place. Through the crack in the bathroom door, Dilla watched Ashley sit at her desk, right in front of the laptop, right in front of the open folder of emails, but Ashley didn't look at the screen. She grabbed her phone charger, plugged it in, and walked out. The door closed behind her. Dilla waited a full minute before allowing herself to breathe, then another minute before she crept out of the bathroom. The laptop screen had gone dark. The folder was still open, but the screensaver had activated. She didn't push her luck. She slipped out of Ashley's room, back into the hallway, and resumed cleaning like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. She now had proof. Real, undeniable proof. Blair Harrington was the monster behind her son's suffering, and Dilla was going to make her pay. But there was one problem she hadn't considered. One complication that would turn this nightmare into something even darker. Brett, Tyler's father. If Blair was the mastermind, where did Brett fit in? Was he an accomplice, an unwitting bystander? Or was there more to his absence than Dilla had assumed? The truth about Brett Harrington was about to reveal itself in the most unexpected way. 2 days after discovering Blair's emails, Dilla was cleaning Brett's home office when he walked in. She apologized and started to leave. Servants were trained to be invisible when the masters appeared, but he stopped her. Wait. His voice was strange, hollow. Dilla turned. Sir? Brett was standing by the window, staring out at the city. His phone, for once, was nowhere in sight. You're the new cleaning woman, right? Yes, sir. Dilla. He nodded slowly, still not looking at her. You've been spending time with my son. Ice flooded Dilla's veins. Had Ashley told him? Was this where it ended? I am sorry if I overstepped, sir. Ashley sometimes needs help, and I stop. He turned around, and Dilla saw something she never expected to see in this cold man's eyes. Tears. How is he? Brett's voice cracked. Tyler, how is he really? Dilla didn't know how to answer. Was this a trap, a test? But something in his desperation felt genuine. Sir, I'm just the cleaning lady. I'm not sure please. The word came out broken. I know something is wrong. I know he's getting worse. But every time I try to get involved, Blair shuts me out. She says I'm overreacting. She says the specialists are handling it. She says I should focus on work and let her manage the house. He sat down heavily in his leather chair, but I hear him crying at night, through the walls, and I can't do anything. Della stared at him. This wasn't the cold, distant father she'd assumed he was. This was a man who had been pushed out of his own son's life, manipulated, controlled, told that his concerns didn't matter until he stopped voicing them. Blair hadn't just hired Ashley to hurt Tyler, she had isolated Brett to make sure he'd never interfere. "Sir," Della said slowly, carefully, "can I show you something?" Brett looked up. What? This was it, the moment of no return. Della pulled out her phone. She opened the photos, the marks on Tyler's legs, the too tight straps, the emails from Blair to Ashley. "Your wife isn't treating Tyler's condition, she's causing it." She handed him the phone. And she watched this grown man fall apart. Tears streamed down his face as he scrolled through the evidence. His hands shook. His breathing turned ragged. When he reached the emails, he made a sound, something between a sob and a scream. "No," he whispered. "Number Blair wouldn't, she couldn't." "I'm sorry, sir." He looked up at her with devastated eyes. Why would she do this?" "Money, insurance claims. There are protocols for children with permanent disabilities, substantial payments over time. We don't need money, we have more money than we could ever spend." "Some people," Della said quietly, "don't see money as enough. They see it as a score, and they'll do anything to make the number go higher." Brett sat in silence for a long moment, then something changed in his expression. The grief was still there, but it was hardening into something else. Rage. "I'm going to destroy her. Sir, we need to be careful. If we move too fast, Blair will cover her tracks. Ashley will disappear. They'll paint you as the abuser, claiming you're trying to deflect blame. These people have resources. I don't care. You need to care." Della's voice was firm. "For Tyler, we need to do this right. We need to build an airtight case. We need to get Tyler out of here safely. And we need to make sure Blair can never hurt him again." Brett stared at her. "You're just a cleaning lady. Why do you care so much?" Della met his gaze. "Because that little boy looked at me like I was the first person who ever saw him. And I promised him I'd come back. If this kind of stories about courage, about standing up for those who can't stand for themselves, is why you're here, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next will test everything these two people are willing to sacrifice." Brett was silent for a moment, then he nodded. "What do we do?" "First, we get Tyler to a doctor, a real doctor, one Blair hasn't bought. We document his injuries officially, then we contact the authorities, but not the local police. They might have connections to the family. We need federal involvement." "How do you know all this?" Della allowed herself a small, sad smile. "I watch a lot of crime shows, and I've been studying to become a nurse. Mandatory reporting laws, child protective services, I know the system." Brett actually laughed, a broken, exhausted laugh. "A nurse. You should have been a detective. Maybe next career." They spent the next hour planning, quietly, carefully, every word spoken softly in case the penthouse was being monitored. Brett would take Tyler to a private clinic the next morning. He knew a pediatrician from college who owed him favors. He would claim it was a routine checkup, something to appease his worry. The doctor would document everything. Then they would contact the FBI's Child Endangerment Division, and then they would watch Blair Harrington's empire crumble. But that night, as Della left the penthouse, she felt eyes on her back. She turned. Ashley stood at the window of the nursery, staring down at her, not suspicious, not angry, smiling, a cold, knowing smile that said, "I see you." Had Ashley overheard their conversation? Did she know what Della had discovered? Was she already calling Blair in Paris to warn her? Della didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Ashley's smile over and over in her mind. It could mean nothing. Maybe Ashley was just being smug. Maybe she enjoyed making the cleaning lady uncomfortable. Maybe it was just her twisted personality showing through. Or maybe it meant everything. By morning, Della had made a decision. She couldn't wait. She couldn't trust that the plan would unfold as expected. She needed to get Tyler out today. She called Brett at 6 a.m. "We move now?" His voice was groggy but alert. "What happened? I think Ashley knows. She was watching me when I left. Something felt wrong. Blair's still in Paris. She's not back until tomorrow. That gives us one day. Can you get Tyler to the doctor this morning? A pause. I'll make it happen. Don't let Ashley know you're taking him. Tell her you're taking Tyler out for father-son time, something casual. She'll be suspicious. She's already suspicious, but if we wait, we lose everything. Another pause. Longer this time. Dila, if this doesn't work, you understand what happens, right? Blair's lawyers will come after both of us. She'll destroy our lives. She has the resources to make us disappear. Dila closed her eyes. She thought about her children, her grandchildren, the life she'd built from nothing. Then she thought about Tyler's eyes. I know, she said, but I promised that little boy. So did I. I just didn't have the courage to keep that promise until you showed me what was really happening. His voice broke. I'll be there in an hour. He hung up. Dila got dressed in her cleaning uniform, just another day at work. Nothing unusual, but when she arrived at the penthouse, she knew immediately that something was wrong. The doorman, usually friendly, met her eyes. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. And when the doors opened on the penthouse level, Ashley was waiting. Behind her stood two security guards Dila had never seen before. Mrs. Harrington called this morning, Ashley said. Her voice was nice. She's flying back early. And she specifically mentioned that you wouldn't be needed anymore. Dila's heart stopped. I don't understand. I have work scheduled. You're terminated, effective immediately. These gentlemen will escort you out. Wait, there's nothing to wait for. Ashley's smile returned, that same cold, knowing smile. Did you really think you could sneak around this family without consequences? You're nobody, Dila. You always were. The guards moved toward her. Dila had seconds to make a choice. She could leave quietly, preserve whatever shred of dignity she had left, walk away and hope that Brett could still execute the plan without her. Or she could fight. Where's Tyler? Her voice was louder now, loud enough for anyone listening. Where's the baby? Ashley's smile flickered. That's not your concern. It's everyone's concern when a child is being abused. When his own mother is paying to have him hurt. When documentation exists proving that you've been deliberately worsening his condition. Shut her up. One of the guards grabbed Dila's arm, but she kept talking. I have photos. I have emails. Everything is backed up in 3 separate locations. If anything happens to me, that evidence goes straight to the FBI. The guard stopped. Ashley's expression changed. You're lying. Try me. A standoff. 2 seconds. 3. Then the elevator dinged behind them. The doors opened, and Brett stepped out, holding Tyler in his arms. The little boy's face lit up when he saw Dila. He reached for her. Actually reached for her, his small hands stretching toward the only person who had ever made him feel safe. We're leaving, Brett said. His voice was steel. All 3 of us. Ashley stepped forward. You can't just watch me. He walked past her like she wasn't even there. The guards looked at each other, uncertain. Their employer was Brett Harrington too. They weren't sure whose orders to follow. Mr. Harrington, your wife specifically said, my wife is a child abuser, and if you try to stop me from protecting my son, I'll make sure you're named as accessories when this goes to trial. They didn't move. Brett reached Dila. He handed Tyler to her without a word. The boy nestled against her chest, his small fingers gripping her uniform. Let's go, Brett said. They stepped into the elevator together. The doors began to close. Ashley lunged forward. You're making a mistake. Her voice was desperate now. Blair will destroy you. She'll take everything. The doors closed. And for the first time in weeks, Dila took a full breath. But they weren't safe yet. They were in an elevator, descending 40 floors, in a building controlled by the Harringtons. At any moment, security could be waiting below. Blair could have already called ahead. The exit could be blocked. Was this escape real, or were they walking into an even bigger trap? What would you have done in that elevator, knowing your enemy controlled everything around you? Tell me in the comments. The elevator descended in silence. Tyler pressed against Dila's chest, his breathing shallow but steady. For once he wasn't crying. He seemed to understand that something important was happening. Brett stood rigid, his jaw clenched, watching the floor numbers tick down. 39, 38, 37. Where are we going? Dila whispered. I have a car waiting in the underground garage, private exit. We will go straight to the hospital. And if security stops us, they won't. I own 40% of this building's management company. If anyone tries to interfere, their careers are over. Della wanted to believe him, but she'd seen how the rich protected each other, how quickly alliances shifted when power was threatened. 25, 24, 23. The elevator stopped. Della's blood froze. The doors opened to an empty hallway, 23rd floor. Someone had pushed the button, but no one was waiting. Brett jabbed the closed door button once, twice. The doors slid shut. They continued descending. That wasn't random, Della said. No, it wasn't. The elevator reached the underground garage without another interruption. The doors opened to dim lighting and the echo of distant footsteps. A black SUV waited near the elevator, engine already running. Move, Brett said. They crossed the garage quickly. Brett opened the back door. Della climbed in with Tyler. Brett took the driver's seat. The car surged forward. In the rearview mirror, Della saw a figure emerge from the elevator they'd just left. Ashley, running, but they were already pulling out of the garage, merging into Manhattan traffic, disappearing into the river of cars and noise. She saw us, Della said. Doesn't matter. By the time she reaches Blair, we'll have Tyler in the hospital. By tonight, the FBI will have everything. And Blair, Brett's hands tightened on the wheel. Blair can burn. The pediatrician, Dr. Sarah Chen, was waiting for them when they arrived. Brett had called ahead, explaining only that Tyler needed an emergency evaluation. But the moment Dr. Chen saw the child, her expression darkened. Bring him in, now. The examination took 2 hours. Della and Brett sat in the waiting room, neither speaking. The silence was heavy with everything they'd witnessed, everything they'd done, everything that was about to happen. Finally, Dr. Chen emerged. Her face told them everything before she spoke a single word. This child has been systematically abused, she said. Her voice was quiet but sharp. The curvature of his spine shows evidence of prolonged immobilization in improper positions. There are ligature marks on his legs consistent with tight restraints. Muscle atrophy suggests he's been confined for extended periods. She paused. Mr. Harrington, I'm required by law to report this to Child Protective Services immediately. Good, Brett's voice was hoarse. Report it, report all of it. You understand that you, as his father, will be investigated as well. I know, I'll cooperate fully. I'll take whatever tests, answer whatever questions. I didn't know. God help me, I didn't know. Dr. Chen studied him for a long moment, then she nodded. I believe you. The evidence suggests a deliberate, methodical pattern of abuse, not the chaotic harm of an abusive household, but something almost clinical, professional. His nanny, Della said, and his mother. Dr. Chen's eyes widened. His mother, I have proof. Della pulled out her phone, emails, photos, a journal documenting everything. The doctor looked at the evidence. Her face went pale. My God, call whoever you need to call, Brett said. CPS, FBI, anyone who can help. I want my wife in handcuffs by sunrise. The next hours were a blur. The police arrived, then federal agents, then child welfare specialists who examined Tyler with gentle hands and horrified expressions. Della gave her statement, then gave it again, then a third time to a different set of investigators who seemed unable to believe what they were hearing. A mother, a famous fashion designer, hurting her own child for insurance money. It was the kind of story that made headlines, the kind that changed how people saw the world. And through it all, Tyler stayed calm, quiet, watching. When the social worker asked if he could stay with his father, Tyler shook his head. Then he pointed at Della. The room fell silent. That's not standard procedure, someone said. But Brett knelt beside his son. Who do you want to stay with tonight, buddy? Tyler looked at Della. Then he did something he'd never done before. He said a word, just one. Her, if stories like this one remind you why you're here, stories about courage, justice, and the quiet heroes who change everything, then subscribe now. The final chapters of Tyler's story are coming, and they'll stay with you long after the video ends. Tyler was speaking. That single word, her, was the first he'd uttered in months. The doctors said he'd been so traumatized that he'd retreated into silence, that the consistent abuse, the lack of warmth, the absence of love had convinced his young brain that words were pointless. Nobody was listening anyway, but Della had listened. And now, finally, Tyler was starting to emerge. The FBI moved fast. By morning, Blair Harrington was intercepted at JFK Airport the moment her private jet touched down from Paris. She was photographed in handcuffs, her famous face twisted with fury, screaming about lawyers and lawsuits, and how dare they. The photos went viral before noon. Ashley was arrested at a friend's apartment in Brooklyn, where she'd fled after watching Brett's car disappear from the garage. She confessed within hours, desperately trying to pin everything on Blair in exchange for a reduced sentence. The evidence was overwhelming. The emails, the journal, the medical documentation, Tyler's injuries. There was no scenario where Blair walked free, but the trial wouldn't come for months, maybe years. The legal system moved slowly, especially for the wealthy, especially when there were millions of dollars in legal fees to burn. In the meantime, Tyler needed stability, safety, love. Brett was a broken man. He loved his son, Dilla believed that now, but he was also shattered by guilt, by the knowledge that he'd been in the same house as his suffering child and done nothing. That he'd let himself be manipulated into silence. He checked into a rehabilitation facility, not for addiction, but for trauma. He needed time to heal before he could be the father Tyler deserved. Which left Tyler with nowhere to go. Child Protective Services placed him in temporary foster care, a good home with kind people, but every time they tried to separate him from Dilla, he screamed. Not the broken screams of his old life. These were the screams of a child who had finally found something worth fighting for. The social workers noticed. They asked questions. They did assessments. They looked at Dilla, a cleaning lady, a night school nursing student, a woman who had risked everything for a child who wasn't hers. And they made a recommendation. Emergency foster placement, the caseworker told her. You'd be approved immediately, given the circumstances. Tyler clearly has a bond with you. The stability would help his recovery. Dilla stared at the paperwork. This wasn't the plan. She was supposed to go back to her life, her small apartment, her studies, her grandchildren. But when she looked at Tyler, really looked at him, she saw her own children, her own grandchildren, every child she'd ever loved. And she saw something else. A future, a boy who could grow up healthy, happy, loved. A boy who could learn that not all adults were monsters, that some people kept their promises. She signed the papers. Tyler came home with her that afternoon. Her apartment was small, one bedroom, a tiny kitchen. Nothing like the marble penthouse where he'd spent his first 2 years. But when Tyler walked through the door, he looked around at the worn furniture and the family photos and the smell of something cooking on the stove, and he smiled. A real smile, the first one Dilla had ever seen. "Welcome home, baby," she whispered. The weeks that followed were hard but beautiful. Tyler had physical therapy for his spine. The damage was permanent. He would always have some curvature, but with proper treatment, he could live a normal life. Walk, run, play. He had speech therapy too. The words came slowly at first. More, please, Dilla, but they came. And every night, Dilla rocked him to sleep, singing the same lullabies she'd sung to her own children decades ago. He never cried when she held him, not once. Brett visited when he could. He was doing better therapy, recovery, rebuilding. He and Dilla formed an unlikely friendship, united by their love for the same little boy. "I'm going to get my life together," he told her one day. "I'm going to be the father he deserves, and when I'm ready." "I want him back," Dilla nodded. "I know, and that's okay. He's your son, but you saved him. We both did." Brett looked at Tyler, who was playing on the floor with blocks Dilla had bought from a second-hand store. "I'll never forget what you did." Never. There was a moment where everything in this story could have gone differently, where Tyler might have stayed lost forever. What do you think made the difference? Was it fate, courage, something else entirely? Tell me in the comments. 2 years later. Tyler was 4 years old. He attended a preschool 3 blocks from Dilla's apartment, where he was known as the kid who laughed the loudest and gave the best hugs. His spine still curved slightly, but it didn't slow him down. He ran. He climbed. He tumbled. He lived with the kind of wild joy that only children who have escaped darkness can understand. Dilla had finished nursing school. She worked at a pediatric clinic now, specializing in identifying signs of abuse. She was good at her job, some would say the best, because she knew what to look for. She knew what a child in pain looked like, and she knew what courage looked like too. Brett had completed his recovery. He'd rebuilt himself from the ground up, selling his stake in the hedge fund, donating millions to child protection charities, devoting his life to being present. And now, finally, he was ready. The custody transfer happened on a sunny Saturday in April. Brett knelt in front of Tyler, his eyes bright with tears he didn't try to hide. "Hey, buddy, you're coming home with me, for real this time." Tyler looked at him. Then I looked at Dela, then looked back at his father. "She comes too," Tyler said. Brett laughed. "She can visit whenever she wants." "No," Tyler's voice was serious, certain. "She's my Dela, she has to come." Dela felt her heart crack open. She'd always known this moment would come, that Tyler would go back to his father, that her role in his life would shrink, that she'd become a visitor rather than a constant, but she wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt. Brett looked at her. "He has a point," he said slowly. "I have a lot of space, more than I need, and Tyler's going to need someone he trusts when I'm at work. You're not seriously, I'm offering you a job, official guardian when I'm unavailable. Room and board included, full salary, benefits." Dela opened her mouth to refuse, to explain that she had her own life, her own family, her own, but Tyler grabbed her hand. "Please," one word. The same word he'd said that night in the hospital. Her. She looked down at this boy she'd saved, this child who had transformed her life as much as she'd transformed his. And she said yes. The new house was different from the penthouse. Warmer, smaller. A brownstone in Brooklyn with a backyard where Tyler could play. There were no marble floors, no art worth millions, no cold, empty halls, just home. Dela had her own room on the top floor. Photos of her grandchildren lined the walls. Her family visited every Sunday for dinner, loud, chaotic, wonderful dinners that filled the house with laughter. Tyler was part of that family now. He called Dela's daughter Auntie. Her grandchildren were his cousins. The circles of love kept expanding, growing, reaching further than anyone could have imagined. And Blair Harrington, she was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. The trial had been sensational, the fallen fashion icon, the monster mother, the unthinkable crime. Her empire collapsed. Her name became synonymous with evil. Some said she deserved worse, but Dela didn't think about her much anymore. Revenge wasn't the point. Tyler was the point. One evening, as the sun set over Brooklyn, Dela sat on the porch while Tyler played in the yard. Brett was inside making dinner, badly, but trying. Tyler ran over to her, grass stains on his knees, joy radiating from every inch of him. "Dela, yes, baby. Remember when you found me?" She felt her throat tighten. "I remember, you saw me." His small hand reached up and touched her cheek. "Nobody else saw me, but you did." She pulled him into her arms. "I'll always see you," she whispered. Always, he nestled against her, safe, warm, loved. And in that moment, Dela understood something. She hadn't just saved Tyler's life. He had saved hers too. Some people spend their whole lives wondering what they're meant to do. Wondering if they matter. Wondering if they'll ever make a difference. Dela had been a cleaning lady, invisible, unimportant, but she had seen something no one else saw. She had spoken when everyone else stayed silent. And because of that, a little boy was alive and laughing and loved. That was the truth of her story, not that she was a hero, not that she was brave, just that she was there, and she cared. And sometimes that's everything. If this story made you feel something, hope, sadness, inspiration, then subscribe to this channel right now, because these stories matter, these moments matter, and so do you. Thank you for being here, thank you for listening. And thank you for believing that sometimes one person really can change the world.